I want to talk for a bit about how Adderall, the drug, meditation, and therapy have changed my life. I realize this is a diversion from what we normally cover, and I think it's questionable whether or not I should even be talking about these issues in this podcast, right? It's called the Nomics update. It's about the company, but I think in a lot of other ways, this is kind of inside our journey building the startup. So there might be a chance that I never do this kind of update ever again. Please let me know if it's helpful to you. Certainly, let's start off with the first one. So the first one, Adderall. Certainly, the plight of people with attention deficit disorder is nowhere near on the same level of the plights of people dealing with other kinds of things, right? So if you have a mental illness or depression, this is not in that same kind of category, right? This isn't in the same category as people who have dealt with, being, repressed, or people who have experienced racism or other kinds of isms because they're members of marginalized groups. But, I think it's worth speaking to. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because back in the day, I saw a social media post from someone who I really respected saying that he was taking some kind of medication for ADD and he was better for it. He was more present to his family. He was more present to his coworkers. He was a nicer person. He was no longer depressed because he wasn't struggling with a lot of the things that come with ADD. So I think it's worth noting, if just to normalize some of this. So starting this year, I began taking Adderall. I got a prescription, and I don't know what to say here other than, my entire life, I never really felt like I had complete access to my brain, and I never felt like my brain really worked. And I went in, I saw a doctor, there were some tests, and I got a prescription. And from day one of taking this, my life has changed. I'm able to execute on things that my family needs me to execute on, that my business needs me to execute on, that our customers need us to execute on. And I've never felt that all of me was available to me until now, right? Cognitively. So it's really made a difference. And so I want to normalize this. And do my small part to destigmatize, attention deficit disorder and ADD. I will say that I'm glad I didn't take any of these medications as a child. Adderall is an amphetamine, and it's real. And I do think that this was a decision I needed to make as an adult. And I'm glad my parents were against this when I was a child. So that's really all I have to say about that. If you are an entrepreneur or involved in finance, there's a decent chance that you have something like this. A very high percentage of entrepreneurs I found have attention deficit disorder. I think it used to be called ADHD. It either used to be called ADHD and now it's called ADD, or it's ADD and now it's called ADHD. But there used to be two types of ADD. One was a kind that came with hyperactivity, and then there was a kind that did not. And I have the kind that does not come with hyperactivity. Although I like podcasting and speaking from stage. I'm a huge introvert. Although someone I know has pointed out that speaking on stage and doing a podcast, for the most part, is not an extroverted activity when you're on stage. It's really just you, and yes, you're interacting with the audience and reading them, but it's very different than being in a group with 5 people, right? So anyway, moving on to the next thing, meditation. Meditation has changed my life quite a bit. I think, especially when I was younger, there was times when I had issues around like verbal impulse control and just saying things that I probably shouldn't have said, and I think I've done some damage in my life because of this. And so what meditation has allowed me to do is it gives me an extra 5 milliseconds in between the moment when my brain says, hey, you should say this stupid thing, and then actually saying it. So it buys me a little bit of time, right? So meditating 15 minutes every day buys me a few milliseconds for another part of my brain to kick in and say, maybe you shouldn't say that stupid thing. And it's really, again, this kind of thing has changed my life as much as anything else I've done as an adult and as an entrepreneur. I really can't. I don't know if anyone else has had issues, maybe verbally communicating things that they shouldn't. I'd say you probably realize that once damaging words or toxic words leave your mouth, it's a whole lot of work to claw them back. You feel bad as the person who said them. You lose sleep about how the person who received those messages might have received them. And studies have shown that it takes roughly 10 positive interactions to replace a negative interaction. So there's a whole lot of value and productivity to be gained from not saying stupid things. And then I think just your general mindset overall improves when you meditate. I'm a parent, and this has had a huge impact on me. I think the third thing that I'll speak to, which is maybe also a taboo topic, is therapy with a counselor. I don't do this for myself one-on-one, but my wife and I go to a therapist, and man, it has been just really fantastic. We started going to a therapist long before we were even married or engaged, and it's just been a really great habit for us. I think there's certain issues that are so entangled or so fundamental to who we are, or there are certain things that trigger us because of past experiences that we've had. And often it can be very difficult to try and deal with those issues or overcome those issues one-on-one, especially when you have kids and a bunch of other things fighting for your attention. So just dedicating the space and the time to meet with someone else and kind of have a space, a safe space for both parties to explore what's going on has been just phenomenal. I think a lot of relationships require garbage collection and garbage expulsion. So my wife and I refer to this as just taking out the garbage, right? That over time in a relationship, things build up, and those things absolutely have to be dealt with. And the longer, the more time that goes by where you're not dealing with those things, the more they build up and take on a life of their own and sort of get distorted and twisted. And so going to a therapist, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, once a month has it's just been life-changing. So I wanted to share these things, from my life. This is an experimental kind of post on the Nomics update. We'll see if we do these in the future. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. If it's not, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled program in the next episode, which comes out tomorrow. Take care. Bye.